from the Timothy Hill Children's Ranch, and this is Fireside Chat. We do these Fireside Chats about a week, once a week, and we hope that you will share these thoughts with friends and family, and that you'll join us every week. Last week we talked about kindness, which is one of the characteristics of the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians chapter 5. And we talked about it's one fruit, but it's 9 flavors. And we talked about flavor number 5 last week, Fern, and that's the flavor of kindness. Love, joy, peace, patience, and kindness. And we want to continue that thought this week, because as I shared last week, if we could learn how to allow the Spirit of God to develop kindness within each one of us, it would change the whole world. And I have some interesting quotes here that I ran across on the internet, Fern, that I'd like to share with you and with our friends who are watching today. Kindness is the golden chain by which society is bound together. Isn't that something?
Yes.
It's like a golden chain that binds us together. It connects people. And my, don't we need that in our society today?
Can I share with you an example of kindness that has touched my heart deeply?
Sure, go ahead.
We had an intern that worked here at the ranch a few years ago, and he had an uncle who was a Dallas policeman, and this uncle had gotten in deep financial debt and didn't know how to get out. But he had a very lucrative insurance policy on his wife. And in his thinking, the only thing he could do is to cash in on that insurance. So he took a hit with another person to take his wife out and collect that insurance.
So the insurance was on his wife?
Yes.
Okay.
And he got caught in it because a prostitute that he was with happened to know about it and let it be known, and so he got caught. And the father-in-law said to the wife, "What are you going to do about it?" And she said, "Dad, the only thing I know to do is forgive him."
Wow.
And the father-in-law was so touched by that when he found out what was going on, that he said, "Well, if you can do that, I can give him a job." Because, of course, he lost his job as a policeman and had no income. So the father-in-law gave him a job. And I was just thinking how powerful and how kind it was of her to do that. And, of course, you're talking about binding together. That did bind the families together, even though she lived with that and she didn't let it bother him. She continued to love him and be the kind of wife to him that she should be. And they were a beautiful family. They had several children and a beautiful family, and that was many years ago, and they've continued today after the family's grown and gone.
So in that instance, kindness and led to forgiveness.
Yes.
And I think that happens in most of our lives. That when we're kind to people, we can kind of overlook mistakes they have made. We can still love them. We can still be there for them and try to help them.
It is a part of forgiveness. I mean, it is a part of kindness to show forgiveness to others.
Henry James once said, "There are 3 things in human life that are important. The first is to be kind. The second, be kind. And the third, be kind." So I thought that was really a great quote from Henry James. Someone has said, and I think this is Helen Keller, that love and kindness are never wasted. They always make a difference. Love and kindness. And it's interesting that in the fruit of the Spirit, love is the very first one. And it kind of spreads throughout all the other qualities of the fruit of the Spirit, doesn't it? Kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Tremendous quote that we need to think about. that kindness is a language that the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Kindness is the universal language all living beings understand. And how wonderful it is when we can communicate with people, even though we may not know their language. Kindness does communicate love, and we certainly need to have that in our world today. And I want to share with you that it takes a lot of courage. When I'm thinking about this wife in Dallas who had the courage to forgive her husband, and that courage spread to her father, also having the courage to take a risk and give him a job.
And what it did in changing that man.
Yes.
And his family.
This last quote is from Caroline Kennedy. And she said, and I thought this was so appropriate at this time in the year 2020 when we've got a presidential election coming up and there's so much division in our country right now. She said years ago, as much as we need a prosperous economy, we also need a prosperity of kindness and decency. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have so much kindness and decency in this country that we could get along with one another? That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Very much so.
We are supposed to be one nation under God, and maybe with a little kindness we can be that again. I wanted to share with you, Fern, and with our wonderful friends that are watching today, a passage from the second chapter of the book of James, which I think is one of the most powerful passages in the Bible on the subject of kindness. So I'm going to read to you, and it starts out in James 2 and verse 12. He says, talk and act like a person expecting to be judged by the rule that sets us free. For if you refuse to act kindly, you can hardly expect to be treated kindly. Kind mercy wins over harsh judgment every time. And that's from a modern translation called The Message. And I just thought that that is such a powerful passage, that we are supposed to be kind to people. That's one of the basic principles of the Bible.
That's what Jesus taught us when he was saying, put yourself in the other person's shoes, so to speak. Treat other people the way we want to be treated, because when we do that and think of their situation rather than our own, we can respond with kindness.
Yes. This passage teaches us that kindness is a proof of genuine faith. You know, it's one thing to say we have faith. It's another to live it out in our lives. And that becomes the proof that we really do have faith. So James continues in verse 14 of James 2. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or a sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself is not accompanied by action. If it is not accompanied by action, is dead. And the Message translation of that says, isn't it obvious that God talk without God acts is outrageous nonsense? So we need to not only talk God's talk, but we need to live God's talk as well. And that's one of the ways that we can prove that we have genuine faith. He continues in verse 18, but someone will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without your deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. You believe that there is one God?
Do what?
Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. So it's not enough to say, I believe in one God, and think that that's all that's required. Kindness pushes back on bad theology. You foolish person, do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless? And the Message translation says, demons do that, but what good does it do them? Use your heads. Do you suppose for a minute that you can cut faith and works in two and not end up with a corpse on your hand? You just cannot separate faith from works, because works is an expression of the faith that you have. He continues in verse 21. He says, was not our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see that his faith and his actions were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. And the scripture was fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. And he was called God's friend. You see that a person is considered righteous by what they do and not by faith alone. And by the way, Fern, this is the only time in the Bible that the word faith alone is used.
Yes.
And it says that it's a faith that is accompanied by good deeds.
And kindness can be such a small thing in our sight. Just to listen to someone when they're hurting is kind.
Oh, yes.
Rather than talking. And sometimes in the case of a death, we think, well, I don't know what to say. Sometimes we don't have to say a word, just to go and sit and listen or hold a hand.
Yes.
And just let someone know that we're there. Kindness, I know recently we've been the recipients of so much kindness from so many people. One couple called us, for instance, and just asked us if they could take us for lunch.
Yes.
And that was such a kind thing to do, to get us out of the house, away from other people, and just be with them alone. Sometimes just a card or a phone call or a note.
Yes.
Bringing food in is a pie or cookies or sandwiches. All of those things are such deeds of kindness that mean so much to someone who's
Yes.
hurting,
Right.
or who's busy, or who's just moving in.
And so kindness is an attitude that develops within us through the power of God's Holy Spirit in us.
Right.
And it expresses itself in hospitality, in kind deeds, all kinds of ways of showing people that we love them.
Or just giving someone a ride. So many people,
Yes.
we take for granted today that we have means of transportation to get someplace, and
Right.
many people don't have cars and don't have transportation, and just a lift or a thought, could I take you to get groceries, or could I pick up groceries for you?
That's right.
Those are such kind thoughts, such kind deeds.
Well, I remember years ago I heard about an old man who had not been going to church most of his life, and he had done a lot of things that he shouldn't have done probably. And he came forward to a church and stood up and looked at the congregation, and he said, I want to confess, I ain't been doing anything, and I'm going to quit it. I'm going to start doing what I know is right to do. So I'm going to challenge you. If you haven't been kind to people, starting with your family, your neighbors, your friends, your church community, whatever it is, the place where you work, if you haven't been kind, I want to challenge you to start doing the right thing.
Just speak it.
Just speak it and do it. And not just think that if you have faith that that's enough. That faith has to express itself, and kindness is one of the ways that it does that. And Fern, I want to close with a wonderful hymn that we're not going to sing, we're going to just read the first stanza of it. And the title of the hymn is To Love Someone More Dearly. To love someone more dearly every day. This was written back in 1913, and it's the first stanza is kind of my mission in life, and I know it's your mission too, my darling. Here's what this poem says: to love someone more dearly every day, to help a wandering child to find his way, to ponder o'er a noble thought and pray, and smile when evening falls. And that's a way to be at peace with God, to be at peace with people, and to get a good night's sleep when you go to bed at night, knowing that you're safe in the hands of God and you're at peace with all mankind. So God bless you. Thank you for being with us this week with the Fireside Chat. We're going to look forward to having you again next week.
Be kind.
And be kind.